Ain't a blame bottle in Dublin. Ain't a blame bottle in Dublin made from Mum's old drawers.
Silence! What is this sudden piece of cardboard?
Helen, Sola will strike. Moves right, brandishes string sword in Sheriff's face.
That string saw doesn't frighten me, lad.
Ah, doesn't it? You just wait till I tie a knot in it then.
In our search for the best of British laughs, we've come this week to Maynooth in Ireland, to a beautiful country house that is, at the moment, the home of Peter Sellers. Peter is one of the few British laughter makers who is truly international, and we were lucky to have caught him between trips. The big question first, how does it feel being an international star, an international funny man? Do you find that it creates problems?
Well, you know, Barry, I've never really thought of it that way at all. I mean, I never thought of anything other than the fact that I miss doing the Goon Show on Sundays. I mean, the big thing in my life, anyone said to me, when did you have the most fun? What were your happiest days? Well, they were the Sundays. Okay, I always had an ambition to work in films as an art form, because I like films. I mean, I enjoy the theatre too, and I should do much more work in the theatre, and I hope to in the near future. But I like films as an art form. And nevertheless, what I did then, or what I was part of, the show, I mean the Goon Show, I mean, although one did other radio shows, like Variety Bambox and things like that, those 10-minute spots if you've got 10 minutes. I mean,
Why do you laugh when you say that?
Well, because it was such a struggle to get on them. Henry Hall's Guest Night, Variety Bandbox. I could always get a worker's playtime. I remember Bill Gates was a very kind chap. He always used to get me on appearing at the corset factory or something of that sort. So I remember taking his corsets home to my mother, and the woman said, what size would your brother like? And I said, I don't know. She said, well, here's our medium. And so I took them home. And that was that.
So what did you do? What sort of spot did you do?
Oh, I used to do impersonations. As a matter of fact, I have all my early recordings. I've got my very first broadcast.
That would be great to hear.
That was from the People's Palace, Mile End Road, in 1948 for Roy Spear, compared by Dick Bentley.
Now it's comedy time, and the laughs are due to be handed around by 22-year-old Peter Sellers, a new comedian who started his career in the RAF gang shows. Today, with his smart patter and impressions, Peter is a popular name on variety bills. So if you're shopping for smiles, you can rely on a Sellers market with Peter Sellers. Good evening. Well, to begin with, here's the story of a reporter who went to meet a very high foreign personage off the plane at a London airport. The reporter said, "Now, can you tell me, sir, how long you expect to be in England?" And the very high foreign personage said,
Well, I expect to be in England for quite some time.
"How very interesting, sir. And are you going to visit any places of interest during your short stay?" "Oh, yes. I must see the Tower of London." "Well, there's one other thing, sir, just one other thing. Where did you learn to speak such faultless English?" And the very high foreign personage said, "Well, I learned to speak English on the shortwave program."
The Goon Show wasn't the first series you did there, was it?
No. I was also in Razor Laugh. That was the first actual series I got into, doing voices.
What characters did you play in this?
I can't really remember now, but I used to sort of be a general voice man, like Jack Train was in It, and John Pertwee in Up the Pole and Much Binding, and Maurice Denham. in those days, I used to just do character voices, funny, thinking of catchphrases, it was all that sort of thing. Like John was doing, "What's the matter, what you do, long and tear 'em up?" And Morris Denham was doing, "Oh, I say I am a fool." Humphrey Lestock was doing, flying off the kite, "Oh, bang, oh, I say I rather care for that." And I did a load of things in Raise a Laugh. I remember I played one character called Crystal Jollybottom, a small boy called Soppy, who I suppose was in a way a forerunner of Bluebottle.
I don't like this game. I don't like all these hairy Germans. They hitted me. Hitty, they went.
Don't worry, men. I'm a pin of a fun of affair. When the German guard comes in with our dinner, let him have it.
And what are we going to eat?
My next most vivid memory of you was in a show called Brouhaha.
Oh,
But tell me about falling into the orchestra pit.
Actually, all kinds of things used to happen, and in those days it was taboo to do anything like bed sitting room or any sort of, improvisation or anything. But I had the middle act. You see, it didn't work very well, and the first act was very good, and the last act wasn't too bad, but it really took a dive in the middle, and I was determined to try and beat this. And we'd worked out all kinds of things to do. At least I had, with some of the actors who I knew I could sling lines at, who wouldn't suddenly freeze in the corner, like West End actors are often, apt to do, to make a move that isn't already preset. All the sort of freedom that you have now didn't exist then, you know what I mean? So we had, Lionel, you could do things with Lionel. You could do anything with Lionel Jeffries. You could do anything with Leo McKern. Leo McKern, one day we were on, and he'd be sort of belting on. And one day I said to him, "Why didn't we do a balancing act in the middle of this scene, like they do in Variety?" He said, "Yeah, what a good idea." So I said, "Because I've just come off and it's like playing to hell out there, just teacups rattling and old people dying, So, we had a terrible uphill fight. I was given the sack I don't know how many times. I was bawled out I don't know how many times. And in fact, I was told that it just was not done in the West End to do the sort of thing I was doing, you see. But this night I was talking about, I managed to get through it until we came to the scene with
Hermione Harvey.
Hermione Harvey. And we had to dance together, I remember. And I was dancing with her, and I must have taken 2 or 3 steps too many towards the foots. And what had happened, I just sort of went straight over the foots with her as well. And how we missed a pile of old iron. We dropped literally 8 feet from there, from the standing position, into the pit, with her on top of me. Wham, It was an enormous laugh. So he thought, they must have thought we were, those mattresses, or we did it every night. I don't know what they thought.
At this time in your life, Peter, you were in Brouhaha playing 8 shows a week. You were filming during the day. And on Sundays, just to make life a bit easier for you, you did the Goon Show. How did you feel when Sundays came around and you had to face that script and the audience again? Sure.
Yeah, well, I used to live for the Sundays, you see. Those Sundays, you see, after a week of misery like that, we'd sort of get back to London and think, oh, my God, how marvelous, you see. So that's why the show was, for us, such an enormous release. And we used to pack so much energy into the show. And all our ideas and thoughts went into the show. Everything we had, we were just so keen to get it, to let people hear what was going on in our minds. This crazy, sort of strange fantasy that used to take place in our minds.
But you changed the whole shape of radio, and I think very largely the whole shape of entertainment in Britain with the Goon Show.
Yeah, I'm sure we did. And I say that in all modesty, and I say it on behalf of, and I'm sure Aaron Spike would feel the same. One can't, I suppose, I can't sort of really bear false modesty in one way, because, okay, one knows whether one's any good at one's job. I know I'm a good actor. Spike knows he's a good writer. Harry knows he's a good singer. We've got to have some confidence in yourself. Otherwise you never get anywhere. But I do feel that we honestly did set the trend for a new form of humor. Remember when we first met up? We, all of us, Mike Benteen, Harry, Spike, and I, had this feeling that we had to do something. We had this thing inside us, we wanted to express ourselves in a sort of surrealistic form. We thought in cartoons, we thought in blackouts, we thought in sketches, we thought of mad characters, we thought of take a situation and instead of letting it end normally, let it end the other way, twist it around, you know. And this grew and grew and grew and grew, and eventually, as you know, after knocking on the BBC door for months and months, poor old Pat Dixon got us on. And 9 years later, we were probably the most listened to show on the air. I am very happy to say I was part of it.
There is a thing, although the BBC took quite a time to accept that what you were doing was the right thing, surely they backed you very strongly. And you had several producers in the course of the run of the Goon Show. And listening to tapes and listening to the LPs that there are, the show never got worse. It got better and better and better. It grew. Things solidified and became more imaginative, more free. How did you feel? What was your relationship with producers in those days?
I think that we always used to get clobbered. I mean, we'd put in things like, we put in some very near-the-mark things, heavily disguised, you see. And then 3 weeks later, some bod would come along and say, I said, look, we've had some letters from people. I mean, we can't do that. And we'd say, oh, we've already done it, you know. He said, oh, so I'll have to cut it out in future. As you know, the show depended largely on sound effects as well. Some of the sound effects were very, very special, and we had a marvelous team of sound effects engineers.
Again, almost for the first time with the Goon Show, you had 3 very intelligent people who cared desperately about what they were doing and the effect they were having on their audience. Was this conscious at the time, or is one just have the benefit of hindsight?
Absolutely. You know, we really, really, really cared desperately about the characters became, they became real, so real for us as they are now. I mean, I've got letters upstairs I get more or less every other week from Milligan, addressed to Bloodknock or from Bloodknock or something, because Bloodknock we keep alive regularly. Moriarty and Thin are more or less, Moriarty's, you know, almost dead now through hunger. It's strange when you listen to the shows now, recordings of the shows, how the characters change over the years, the sound of the characters. I've got some recordings indoors, and listen to Blue Bottle then, and listen to Blue Bottle as he was at the end of the show. They're almost, and Henry and Minnie too. Hen and Min still, we often get letters from Hen and Min, because we had some special special notepaper printed. Wacklow, Futtle and Crun, solicitors at law, Minerva Bannister, and we send them occasionally to odd people when they don't pay us for odd moments.
What are you doing, Min? The dog's had 4 burns already. 3 of them are mine, I think. Now, look. Another one. Ah, look.
Oh, Lord Crun.
What?
This skull is 5 million years old.
Happy birthday to
I will come back to the subject of films. You became world famous as a character actor in films. Generally speaking, do you arrive at your characters after a lot of thought, or do some of them just bubble to the surface by, not accident, but by unconscious means?
Oh, well, I tell you, unconscious means really arrived at Rome airport, first time, second time in Rome, never worked in Rome, thought, Blake Edwards, wow, you know, suddenly people at the airport, what am I walking into? Wow, here we are. Anyway, new life, Rome, smells, beautiful, wonderful things, anything could happen. Driving back into town, what do you think, how do you see Clouseau? I'd read it once. He's a sort of below par French detective. We later invented all this accident-prone business, but it came out during those early discussions. See, Blake said to me, how do you visualize him? I said, well, just off the top, all I can see is that a lot of Frenchmen, to show their virility, believe in growing a nice, thick, bushy moustache. It's sort of, the French, and if you notice that those old sort of Sloane liniment things are always men with big, thick, virile moustaches. And I thought, Cluzet must have a big, thick moustache to prove to somebody or other that he's virile, you see, and in command. And I thought that would be the first thing. And the hair fairly short, And I said he was going to use this sort of French-English accent, which is a whole other discussion, I think.
Inspector Clouseau, how much money do you make?
Oh, what has this got to do with it?
Well, your salary. How much does a police inspector get paid? Enough to buy your wife a $10,000 mink coat?
Oh, of course not.
You're aware that your wife spent $7,000 at the Yves Saint Laurent only last month?
What?
And 2 months before that, $4,000?
Oh, it's impossible.
We know for a fact that your wife has spent at least $30,000 on clothes during the past year.
Sir, my wife is very frugal. She saves out of the housekeeping money.
$30,000 out of the housekeeping money.
Yeah, we've been married for 10 years.
About the time that these robberies began and the notorious Phantom came into existence, correct?
Yes. No, not correct. Of course not correct. Of course. Oh, yeah. Wait.
Not the child. He must be the Phantom.
No, I'm not the Phantom. No, please.
Who impresses you in the current scene amongst directors the world over?
Well, there's Blake Edwards, who I worked with for. Currently in the
Yes, who would you,
at this moment,
a free choice, apart from directing yourself.
Right now,
who would you?
Mike Nichols.
Mike Nichols?
Yes. I'd like to work with Mike Nichols very much. I think I might find something going with him. I'd like to work with John Schlesinger, very much. I'd like to do another film with Stanley Kubrick, and probably will. And Dr. Strangelove and Lolita. I did both of those with him.
Brilliant. I thought that Strangelove was possibly, of all films, perhaps my favourite, although Pink Panther was my favourite comedy. I mean, out-and-out comedy. But I thought there were nuances in that. But you were, surely, when you found the character Werner von Braun, which was probably based on there's a certain amount of inspiration came into that, surely. Could you tell us a little about that characterization?
Yes, well, it was certainly incident. I would agree with you. Kubrick's, in my opinion, one of Kubrick's best films, and he's made some very good ones, including Powers of Glory. But it's as good now, incidentally, strangely enough, as it was then, even better. I saw it recently in America. But the character of Strangelove came about, he was written in as we saw him. Stanley one day said, what about this guy, his hand has been injured in some sort of nuclear experiment or something. Why don't we put on a black glove? It looks always good with a wheelchair, we could... So we started to use this and just had the black glove, and it sort of denoted something to do with some horror accident, something strange going on. A black glove is always a bit weird, isn't it? You see a black glove, maybe a man's lost his hand in something. Maybe he doesn't want somebody to see his hand. Maybe it's marked in some way. We discovered, at least I discovered, in the middle of it, that I found that the right hand was a renegade hand, was a runaway hand, and the left side, in other words, the right, he was split right down the middle. In fact, I started suddenly to do this Heil Hitler thing. And that came about because I thought, supposing this hand has got nothing to do with this hand and hates this hand, and this hand hates this hand. You see, you've got the color prejudice going already. Not only this is a Nazi. So whatever he did to this hand, it took its revenge out on him, you see. And so that's how that started.
Peter, in all your work, wherever it's been, you've obviously never been afraid to try new things, to try and experiment, to play with ideas. This seems to be almost your trademark. Where do you think you're going to push out into next? Have you any idea where your career will take you now?
No, not really. Barry, I'm really only an instrument for somebody's writing or a character. In one way, I think of myself as a sort of medium. In other words, somebody who's a catalyst who's able to sort of translate. Now, I don't mean to say that I just read lines, because all actors just read lines. I know I can do certain things well, and I know, but I know this to be true, but I'm not essentially a funny man. I come to life, so to speak, when I'm doing something that appeals to my sense of humor.
Fine, I can hear you now, Dmitri. Clear and plain and coming through fine. I'm coming through fine too, eh? Good, then. Well then, as you say, we're both coming through fine. Good. Well, it's good that you're fine then, and I'm fine. I agree with you. It's great to be fine. Now then, Dmitri, you know how we've always talked about the possibility of something going wrong with the bomb. The bomb, Dmitri. The hydrogen bomb. Well, now, what happened is, one of our base commanders, he had a sort of, well, he went a little funny in the head. You know, just a little funny. And he went and did a silly thing. Well, I'll tell you what he did. He ordered his planes to attack your country. Well, let me finish, Dmitri. Let me finish, Dmitri. Well, listen, how do you think I feel about it? Can you imagine how I feel about it, Dmitri? Why do you think I'm calling you? Just to say hello? Of course I like to speak to you. Of course I like to say hello. Not now, but any time, Dmitri. I'm just calling up to tell you something terrible has happened. It's a friendly call. Of course it's a friendly call. Listen, if it wasn't friendly, you probably wouldn't have even got it.
There's something that we accept more in Britain than they do in the States, in my experience, and it's something that's coloured your work, almost your whole career, and I mean black comedy. Where do you think black comedy, the seamy side of comedy, fits into your scheme of things?
It'll only ever fit in when it's really funny. For example, the idea, this type of black comedy, this takes the form of a joke, but I mean it's an illustration of the sort of thing we're talking about. A Roman galleon, slaves, manacled slaves, you know, just the flesh and muscles just barely hanging to them. They're all like Moriarty's, you know, absolutely straight out of Belson. And the commander comes out and says, some good news and some bad news. He says, but first I will give you the good news. In 10 minutes' time, you will each man be given a plate full of hot steaming food. And this will help you, build you up and make you feel strong and make you feel generally good. There's not a murmur, see? And he said, now for the bad news. This afternoon, I think I will do some water skiing. I have a mental picture of all these wrecks, you know, going millions trying to get this guy out on water skiing. You know, yeah. It's that form of black humor that appeals to me. Never ever for the sake of effect. Absolutely, that goes against really the real essence of black humor. I'm sure the people who do black humor for its effect misuse it. It's only if the thing is intrinsically funny. Spikes was filming me the other day with this marvelous story of this boy. Here's another example of black humor, which I think is great. About the boy who was the German, like Martin Bormann, if you like, the top Nazi who escaped, decided to start the Fourth Reich, and went somewhere in South America, married a beautiful German girl, and they had a beautiful German pure Aryan child, blue eyes, blonde hair, everything. They thought this was it, you know, and they're marvelous, going to grow up into a Hitler youth. That was it, you know. And come 6 months, the baby hadn't uttered a word. So I went to see the doctor. Anything wrong with the baby? He said, no, nothing wrong. He said, often with children, a very high IQ, obviously, this child will speak in time. It's only a matter of time. Don't worry about it. Year goes by, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. The kid hasn't made one sound, gurgle, nothing at all. So it's real despair. And big, long dissolve. The boy is 16. They're all sitting around at dinner at the table. Obviously, by now they're used to it, but it's still an enormous blow to, especially this father who was top Nazi, and the mother, but they've come to live with it. And this kid, this young youth, Hitler Youth who's there, looks the epitome of everything that Hitler stood for and the Hitler Youth movement stood for, is sitting there eating soup. And suddenly he threw the soup spoon down and said, "Crisis of his heart." So the father and mother rushed over and said, why, etc. Why have you never said anything till now? Oh, what's the fire? God, have you so? What's the fire? So he said, but why have you never said anything? Why have you never said one thing? So he said, because up until now, everything has been satisfactory.
It's a really cruel anecdote in its way. I think one of my favourite things from your whole repertoire is the old actor failing an audition that has all sorts of overtones and undertones of black comedy, pathos. Have you any more of this type of thing that you could tell us?
You're right. You see, there's another example of black humour, but pathetic. But it's very true. I mean, this is real life, isn't it? This is a story, I think, which illustrates very clearly the despair of the aging actor. This one decided to go into the local pub one day, sort of, the fraying cuffs and collar, which he every morning cut with the nail scissors. And he said, good morning, landlord. I'll have a large Remy Martin. My name is Warrington Minge. I'm appearing at the Theatre Royal in a new play entitled Tomorrow's New Yesterday. I was wondering whether you could oblige me by cashing this small cheque. And the fellow said, I'm sorry, sir. He said, have you not seen the notice? He said, what notice are you referring to? He said, that notice up there. No checks cashed for the... no. I hadn't, I must admit, I had not noticed that notice. I'll make it a lemon shandy. I think I'll have a lemon shandy. It's early in the day for brandy. So he, no luck there, went down to the butcher's further down the road. Master Butcher, a fine hygienic establishment you have here, all meat under cover, free from contamination by flies and other pests. My name is Warrington Minge. I'm appearing at the Theatre Royal in a new play. I was wondering if you could oblige me by cashing this small cheque. He said, I'm sorry, sir, I'm not the owner here. He said, what? He said, I'm not the owner here, and he was once taken on very badly by some theatricals. He said, no, don't bother to go into the whole thing. A small lean kidney and a chop. I'll call back for it later. I've been back to my lodgings. Thank you. Good afternoon. So he drives up and down the road, no luck at all, ends up at a Chinese laundry at the bottom of the street, goes in there. Zappa. He said, it's a blood knock thing in a way. What a fine race of people, the Chinese. Many years I've spent in your fine country and repertory in Singapore, I remember. I don't have any soiled linen upon my person at the moment, but I do have some that will require your attention in due course at my lodgings. I shall bring it in. My name is Warrington Minge. I'm appearing at the Theatre Royal in a new play, and I was wondering whether you could oblige me by cashing this small cheque. He said, I'm so sorry, sir, but we never cash cheque for theatrical people. He said, I see. Then would you mind pressing the bloody thing for me?
That was the best of British Laughs, in which Peter Sellers was talking about his life and views on the world of comedy to Barry Took. Illustration.